second research question we investigated was, how are applicants portrayed as having low self-esteem rated by potential employers on a variety of characteristics? And does this change if social skills are required for the job? Participants rated applicants on these 17 items. Items 6, 9, 12, 15, 16, and 17 were reverse scored to make them comparable to the positive items because they reflected negative qualities.
To examine the interrelationships among the variables on the second section of the questionnaire, we ran a bivariate correlation. There was missing data for 2 participants, one of whom failed to complete all of the items, and the second participant missed completing one item in the second section of the questionnaire. The participants were excluded listwise. This table shows that, in general, many of the items were intercorrelated. The pattern of correlations here is more scattered than the correlations between the items on the first part of the questionnaire, suggesting that not all of the items are related to one another. We carried out a second principal components analysis to determine which of these items clustered together. We requested a principal components analysis with Varimax rotation and extraction based on eigenvalues greater than 1. 4 components were extracted. Overall, the 4 components accounted for 63.2% of the variance. The first component accounted for 19.19% of the variance. Based on the items that loaded highly on component 1, we called it likability, as all of the items seemed to relate to how likable the applicant was. The second component accounted for 17.79% of the variance. Based on the items that loaded highly on component 2, we called it work with others, as all of the items related to qualities that you would want in an individual that was a colleague in the work environment. The third component accounted for 16.7% of the variance. Based on the items that loaded highly on component 3, we called component 3 self-confidence, as all of the items seemed to relate to how self-confident the applicant was. The fourth component accounted for 9.52% of the variance. Based on the items that loaded highly on component 4, we called component 4 emotional stability, as all of the items seemed to relate to how emotionally stable the applicant was. For each extracted component, we carried out a 2-way analysis of variance. We checked the assumptions similarly to our previous ANOVAs, and all assumptions were met. There was a significant main effect of applicant self-esteem on perceptions of applicant self-confidence. This figure shows that applicants who lack self-esteem are perceived as less self-confident than applicants for whom no self-esteem information is provided.
There was a significant interaction between applicant self-esteem and the social skills requirement on ratings of applicants' emotional stability. When social skills weren't mentioned in the job ad, applicants for whom no self-esteem information was provided were rated as higher in self-confidence than applicants who were described as lacking self-esteem. However, when excellent social skills were required for the position, applicants described as having low self-esteem were rated as higher in emotional stability than applicants for whom no information on self-esteem was provided. Applicants with low self-esteem are rated lower on average on self-confidence than applicants for whom no self-esteem information is provided. This suggests that potential employers base their judgments of applicant self-confidence on reported self-esteem rather than on information about the applicant's qualifications, for example, their resume, in terms of how outgoing the applicant is, how self-assured, overly sensitive, socially awkward, self-critical, and moody. Applicants with low self-esteem are perceived as less emotionally stable than applicants for whom no information on self-esteem is provided when social skills are not mentioned in the job advertisement. Applicants with low self-esteem are perceived as higher in emotional stability than applicants for whom no information on self-esteem is provided when social skills are a job requirement, based on ratings on the following items: self-absorbed, overly sensitive, and moody. This interaction should be interpreted with caution based on the loadings for the emotional stability component. This component explained only 9.52% of the variance, and only 3 items loaded significantly on this component. In addition, the component loading for the self-absorbed item was 0.84, whereas the other 2 items had component loadings of 0.48. Therefore, this component may not be a good indication of the biases that employers may have towards applicants with low self-esteem. As discussed in class, the more components are extracted, the less meaningful each subsequent component becomes, as it is able to account for less of the variance than the components extracted earlier in the analysis. To summarize, applicants who are described as having low self-esteem are perceived as less likely to succeed in a job and less self-confident than applicants for whom no information on self-esteem is provided. Therefore, potential employers do appear to make some negative judgments about candidates with low self-esteem.
In light of the puzzling interaction that occurred with the emotional stability component, future analyses should explore this component by removing the self-absorbed item, or retaining only this item and removing the overly sensitive and moody items. Further analyses may also examine the effects of gender on ratings. Finally, future research could explore how applicants with low self-esteem present themselves on a resume. Limitations within this study were around participant sampling. First, there was an unequal sample size within the conditions. Future studies should ensure that there is an equal number of participants in each of the 4 conditions. Second, undergraduate students are not representative of the general population. Therefore, future studies should consider having actual professors or other potential employers complete the study, as this would increase external validity. Third, it is important to consider that participants volunteered for the study and were not randomly selected. A random sample would have been more representative in terms of age and other demographic variables. Finally, the study should be replicated with a larger sample size.